Hello there and welcome. My name is Karl Connolly with the BRS Integration Lab in Hopkinton. What I plan to do today is give you a quick overview of utilizing Avamar 6.0 to back up Sharepoint farms to data domain systems. We're then going to use Kroll Ontrack to do a granular file recovery of certain items within that backup. So this screen should be fairly familiar to you. This is the splash screen, or the launch screen for our field service Avamar, which is BSG 69013. So to get going, let's take a look at the configuration first. We'll want to show you that data domain is discovered and active, and you can see here that the DD is listed out here in this left pane. The green globe next to the name means that there is active SSH communication between the Avamar and the data domain system, so that all looks healthy. Nice thing about the Avamar console is that it gives you at a glance some very nice detailed information about the data domain that we're actually going to be writing to. For example, here you can see that the maximum number of streams is set to 50. You can see my DD boost username, and you can also see here that this is a DD880. So once that is set up, you next need to configure a dataset. The dataset is actually where you'll specify the backup will actually use that data domain system. So we have numerous data sets configured here. On the left hand side you can see quite a few. Let's take a look at our Sharepoint 2K10, and if I click on that and highlight the Sharepoint DD, you can see here that I'm using the VSS plugin for Sharepoint. And then over here you can see here that when it says DD or equals true, that means the data domain is actually in use. So how did I get this? Let's take a look at that by editing it. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice on the source tab is that I've already explicitly entered to use the VSS plugin for Sharepoint, and that's why that's the only thing that's listed down here. It's the options tab, however, where you actually specify which DD you want to write out to. So I'll scroll down here to Windows Sharepoint VSS, and once I click that, you can see I'll get a checkbox that I can say use the data domain system. Now if there were more than one DD systems known to this Avamar, I would have a listing in this drop down here, but as you can see there's just the one, so that's 150 and that's the one I'm going to be using. Some of the other agents that can write to DD are VMware, Exchange, Oracle, and SQL Server. So there's just 5 right now. Those already have the DD libraries included, so you don't have to do any additional configuration. Now all of those agents except the Oracle agent will just write a single stream to the DD at this point. But for future enhancements, you can see here a maximum number of backup streams is already built into the UI, and that'll be enabled in a later build of Avamar. Okay, so we have our data set set up. You can see here again I've specified to use the data domain system. So let's go ahead and click OK. Now we'll want to take a look at our policies. Let's go to our policies, and you can see here I've got a Sharepoint 2K10 group created, and within that 2 separate groups. If you're running this demo and you want to execute it using Kroll, make sure you run the Sharepoint Kroll group, because I have that configured specifically to use Kroll. Again, it'll write out to DD, and I've already gone and ran a backup. Of course, you can run this backup group now. It'll take about 6 minutes to run this backup. Once the backup is complete, you want to execute a restore. So navigate to the backup and restore window. Select your Sharepoint. Select the farm. Right-click on the farm and choose Restore Now. Choose Restore Everything to a different location and choose the slash. By entering a slash here in the absolute destination, it's instructing Avamar to actually go ahead, look at the system, which is this BSG 67145, which is where the Sharepoint is, and look at any of the drives that are mapped on that system and start at the letter Z. If Z is available, then the Avamar will mount the data domain backups on drive Z. And then choose Windows Sharepoint GLR, granular level recovery, and go ahead and click OK. When you click OK, it will initiate the restore. The restore takes about a minute. Now it's not actually restoring at that point. All it is doing is actually mounting the drive. And you can see I've already ran this for you here, and it takes about a minute. Now you'll want to take a look at the drives that are mapped on the system, and as I said before, it'll pick the first available drive, which just happens to be Avamar Virtual Disk. Now if you're familiar with Axion FS, this is very similar. You can just browse the drive. And you can see here, if I go to D, for example, where my Sharepoint database is resided, this is the backup off of the DD that is presented out to me. Now it's an MDF file and a log file, a SQL file. Obviously I can't recover single files from this. This is where the Kroll Ontrack comes into play. So let's go ahead and launch Kroll Ontrack. You can see here it's Ontrack Power Controls for Sharepoint. When you launch Ontrack, it's going to present you with a blank UI like this. So you'll need to specify a source and a target. The source is where the data resides. Now obviously that's the data that we've already backed up to the data domain system. So you can simply click on this button here, Open Source, and then navigate when you click Add to the Avamar mounted drive. And you can see that that's Avamar Virtual Disk Z. Now you do need to select both files, so you can simply mouse over them, select them, and you can see they're populated here under file name. Just click Open. Click Finish, and that will scan logs, pre-scan logs, hash the logs, and retrieve the content databases for you. And very quickly then you'll see that the entire Sharepoint farm has been extracted from that backup that is on the DD. So you can select, say for example, any module here and view the files. Now we want to actually extract some of these files, so restore some of these files into our target, which is our Sharepoint farm that is running on this machine here. So I've copied my URL of my Avamar Sharepoint farm that's running on this machine here, and I can simply choose Open Target. And then in the Open Target, you can see here I can specify this URL. When I click Finish, Kroll Ontrack will actually browse the active farm. And you can see here it's Avamar Demo 6.0 and it's on this URL. So now to restore files, I can choose the corresponding folder here on my active farm and pick any of these files that I want and then just drag them into the QA Engineer folder and it'll start the process. And all items are copied successfully. And I can choose Save. I can choose to do a copy report so I'm aware of what was copied. Choose to save that and close. And as you can see, all of those files have now been restored from my backup into the active Sharepoint. I can choose to pick entire folders if I want by choosing to copy, selecting my Sharepoint and pasting. And numbers of items was 2, and the entire folder with its contents have been copied. And if I come down here and look at the corresponding QA gap, you can see that they're down here. Now if I choose a file that I've already copied and drag it down into the folder, the item gets copied again and incremented in name. So as you can see, the combination of the GLR plugin and the Ontrack power controls make it very easy and simple and fast to restore single granular files. That concludes the demo. Thank you very much.